Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the podcast. In the interview today, you'll hear Amy Fenton. Amy Fenton's a friend of mine who works at Orange, and she kind of has 3 different roles that she serves in there. One role is that she's an Orange specialist, meaning she helps church leaders who use their elementary curriculum. And then she also leads their VBS initiative, as well as leading Live to Serve, a volunteer conference they put on every year that children's ministry leaders can bring their volunteers to. And so we talk about all that. But before we jump into that, I want to give a shout out to Kyle Sullivan. Kyle left a comment and a rating on iTunes for the podcast, which is great. I really appreciate that because it really helps spread the word. In his comment, Kyle mentioned that he's excited to continue learning through the guests on the podcast, which is what it's all about. That's why I started it, because I love learning from other leaders. And so this is a chance to have a conversation with them and learn from them, and we can all be part of that. So if you listen and you enjoy this, I'd really appreciate you leaving a rating and a review on iTunes as well. Today, with my interview with Amy, you can follow the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 8. And we have some links in there to some of the things she mentions, including a new thing that she is doing along with Sue Miller that you might be interested in. So you can see that in the show notes. But let's jump into my interview with Amy Fenton. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Amy. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I work for Orange. My job is an Orange specialist, which in my case encompasses a lot for that company.
So it's a generalist and a specialist, right?
Right.
Ready combined?
Right, exactly. I tell people that name is vague so that we can add things to my role, and nobody really knows if it should or should not be.
There you go. Except for when something needs done, and they're like, remember, that's one of the 15 things.
Right.
On the I don't know, but specialist by itself is a pretty cool name. You know, that's nice to have in your title. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It makes me feel like I need to know a lot.
Well, you do. So that's a good thing.
I hope so.
So what do you do with Orange?
Part of my role is to coach and consult churches who are trying to implement the Orange strategy. So I love that part of my job. I love helping kids pastors succeed in coming up with a strategy. A lot of them don't ever realize they need a strategy, much less have they ever implemented one. So that's a fun piece of what I do. Another piece of my job is to produce our Vacation Bible School product. That we have a new Orange VBS that I'm super excited about. So I work with the team and kind of steer the ship on that. And then I also coordinate our Live to Serve conference, which is an amazing conference for kids pastors to bring their volunteers to come and be poured into for a half day. So I'm juggling all those balls right now. And that's about all I can handle on my plate. So
I bet those are 3 big things, right? Because
Yes.
Just the specialist role itself, serving churches, helping coach them, helping get connected with Orange and the strategy, that by itself is big enough, right?
It is big, but it is really, really fun. It's just cool to work with leaders all across the country and hear what they're doing. That's my favorite part.
That's good. And we're going to tap into some of that today because we're going to hear about that and Live to Serve and VBS. But before we talk about that, I wanted to talk about your role serving on staff at a church before you came to Orange, because you had kind of a unique experience that I think a lot of people could relate to. So tell us about that.
Right. Well, I actually, I went to school at Samford University. And when I was there, I knew that I wanted to be a kids pastor. And I started to serve at a church called the Church at Brook Hills. It's still there today. When I started, it was a brand new church plant. That was kind of before church plants were cool. It was a long time ago because I'm old. But
well, church plants haven't been cool that long. So maybe you're young and it's just been a short time ago, right?
There you go. Let's say that.
Yeah.
Let's just pretend that.
That sounds right.
And I was there for 10 years as first an associate kids pastor and then came on as the kids pastor there, directing that ministry. And that was just an amazing way to get my start in ministry. The church grew from 500 to 5,000, what felt like overnight. They let me make a lot of mistakes, and they still believed in me and championed me. And I learned so much from a lot from what I did right, but also a lot from what I did wrong. And I was in a place of a lot of grace, and I grew a ton there. And then I came to Franklin, Tennessee, and came on staff with a church called the People's Church. And I was there for 9 years, leading ministries there. It was a very different experience because that church had been in existence for almost 150 years. So I went from a brand new church to a church that had a lot of history and heritage. So I've served for almost 20 years in kids ministry in 2 different churches.
So when you went to the People's Church, we've talked about this before. It was quite a challenge coming into the children's ministry specifically. And why was that?
Right. It was a big challenge just because there were not a lot of volunteers. So this was a big, big church. We had 50 preschool classes that met on a Sunday morning. And when I started, I asked them, okay, how many permanent committed volunteers do we have? And we had like 3.
3. What is? How do you have 3 volunteers for? Because we're talking 50 rooms. I don't even know how many kids that is. I mean, there's 500 kids, 300 kids. It's a crazy number. 3 volunteers. Some people think they have it bad, but they don't have. They have more than 3.
Yeah. So if you have less than 50 classrooms to staff and you have more than 3 volunteers, then you're in better shape than I was.
Yeah,
so feel good.
Yeah,
feel good about where you are.
It could be worse. Yeah.
There were a lot of people that were helping, but they were helping very hodgepodge and very sporadically.
Was it like parents, or was it all across the board? Some churches just recruit parents, you know what I mean? Like to try to get help whenever they can.
Right. Yeah. A lot of them were parents. I remember before I took this job, I was at the church and they came on the stage and they were going to start to make a plea for help. And they said, we really need some people to serve in preschool ministry, and we need 75 more volunteers before next weekend.
Nice.
And they were almost painting this negative picture. Like when I heard that, I thought, ugh, what's so bad that you still need 75 people? Like, I don't want to go volunteer in there. I don't want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Nobody wants to get on the sinking ship. That doesn't sound like, vision of what, hey, this could be really good. And all that. It sounds more like we're dying over here. Send people.
Yeah. Please send help quick. And if you walk in, you may never get out. And it's a bad, bad situation. And it just sounded really desperate. And I like a good challenge. So for me, that was part of the thing that made me excited about taking the position, because I thought we've got to change this. We have got to change this mindset. This cannot be. These kids deserve to be the elite. Like, you are really blessed and lucky if you get to be a part of our preschool ministry. And I knew it would be a challenge, but I love a good challenge. So for me, I thought it would be fun.
Well, and not everybody would think that, for sure. But I know what you mean. I like that too. I like a good challenge. And you stepped in there, and this is probably where everybody leans in, because what they want to know is, how did you do it? How did you change that culture so dramatically?
Right. That's a great question too. I knew that I needed those people to trust me. I knew that there were people who were very content with the way things were. They really didn't have a vision for what the ministry could be. Therefore, they really didn't see a reason for any change to come. I think a lot of them probably hoped I would just come in and continue to go the status quo. So for me, I decided that I would spend the first 3 months, because I started in the summer. So I thought, I'm going to spend these first 3 months just letting them continue just how things are, and walking the halls and meeting people and building relationships. I took people to coffee. I hung out with people. I visited with their kids. I really tried to build that trust with everybody and get to know them personally, so that when it came time to cast a vision, they would trust that I knew what I was talking about. So we decided to launch in September with a new look and a new feel in our ministry. And I had to cast a ton of vision. I had to cast vision in large group meetings, but also I had to get key parents on board, key volunteers on board, those 3 permanent volunteers on board, our staff on board. I had to cast the vision for the why behind the change. And they slowly helped me leak the vision to the rest of the church so that by the time we got to September, it was a really great launch. It was a really successful launch. But were we fully staffed? No. Did we still have vision to cast? Absolutely. But I'd say for people, if they're looking to make a massive change, you have to be patient and you have to cast vision and you have to build relationships.
And you did that, like you said, you had multiple meetings, multiple conversations and all that stuff to help people understand where you were headed, kind of share the vision with them. Did anything happen from the stage? Was there any conversations about, hey, you know what, from up front during the services, we should talk about this? Or did you do this all behind the scenes, so to speak?
Right. When we got closer to time, we actually used some of the videos that Orange provides on our, like when you log into your account, we have some vision videos that kind of give an overview of the strategy. So we did use those in the service to cast some vision, and the pastor was supportive of it, and he casted that vision some. More of it came from one-on-one and smaller group conversations than anything. Your people who are bought in will help you recruit better than any one big push from the stage. Those can be helpful. They absolutely can. But I think through relationships, you tend to recruit people that stick better. That's just my opinion. So for me, that's what worked better. I mean, we were talking about it in a lot of different ways through social media and from the stage, but those meetings and relationships and coffees were key.
And I agree with you. I think anything from stage it's nice, it's helpful, but it's like a bonus. Like you're going to get the real work. It's the easiest, I think. So that's why we all want to gravitate towards that. Like, let me just, hey, pastor, can you do this? And then put that on their plate. That's easier. But like you're saying, in the long run, it's not as effective. It's probably most helpful for people who really have no idea, like are somewhat new or don't even know, haven't heard of it. And then that's the first time they're hearing, oh, I could be part of helping serve and lead, care for the next generation. Everybody else that's been there forever, they should hear about it some other way. It sounds like. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you.
So as you did that, one thing I think about is it sounds like you had a lot of people serving very infrequently. You said like monthly or something like that. So did you change up the plan of that and say, okay, the new expectation is weekly, biweekly, whatever it was? Right.
Well, one of my favorite things that my friend Jeff Helton says is you get what you allow. I hear a lot of people complain about that same thing in their ministry, but they allow it to happen.
Yeah, like showing up late. I mean, I know again, they're volunteers, but again, if you don't say anything about people showing up 15 minutes late every week, it makes sense. You get what you allow. That's a good phrase.
So you get what you allow. So I went into it thinking, okay, I don't want people serving once a month. So how do I stop that from happening anymore? Well, that just wasn't an option anymore. So we just went in and said, if you serve once a month and you want to continue to do that, could we put you on the sub list? Because we're going to need subs. People get sick, people travel, that's going to happen. But our goal from here on out is to do what's best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is to have a consistent leader in their classroom every week. So I know that's not what's best for you, volunteer adult, but what's best for the kids is this. So that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're pushing for. I also, though, knew that these people were very afraid of being sucked into a ministry that they could never get out of. So I felt like I had to kind of handle them carefully and not just say, hey, sign the dotted line that you're going to serve permanently in this classroom from now until Jesus comes. So we made forms and just said, hey, I know this is very different, but if you'll commit to help me just for this semester, it's September. Can you make it to Christmas? Could you just serve every week until Christmas? And then I'm going to pass out these forms again at Christmas, and you can decide if you can make it through the spring semester or not. And I promise no pressure. And if this is not for you and not where you should serve, then I'll even help you find where in this church you should use your gifts. I didn't say you don't have to serve anymore, because I believe that they should be serving somewhere in the church, but it didn't have to be in kids ministry. So people were cool with that. And I knew if I could get them in to get a taste of it, that they would fall in love with those kids and they would want to come back. In fact, that December, I think we had about a 90% retention rate when we passed those second round of forms out.
That's great. Do you have any idea how many of the previous teams that were doing like monthly, how many of them stuck and did weekly? Because I would imagine you lost some. Some probably said, yeah, put me on the sub list, which is normal. Do you have any idea how many it was?
I would say probably 10 to 12. So it wasn't a huge amount that I lost.
That's good.
I did have some people who were we had a few people who were just mad that things were changing and left the church. And that's okay too. Like, here's the great thing about my city, and this is probably true in most cities. I know a ton of great churches in this area. I know a ton of great children's pastors in this area. Like, if this church isn't for you and you don't like the way we're doing things, that is okay, because I can help you find some great places to go. It's not about building up numbers at my church. It's about doing what's best for your family and trusting the leadership to do what's best for your church, for the church where they are. So, we had some people leave, and that was okay. God led them to a great new place, and they are being used there. But the people who stayed and who caught the vision, it did not take long for them to really see the difference they were making in the lives of kids and families.
Yeah, I have, and you would look back and you'd say, yeah, absolutely, it was a great move. Even though those people left, they're Christians, they found a church, it was good all around, hopefully for them too, but certainly good for your church. So a friend of mine who serves up north here, he actually had kind of the horror story version where he came in to a church that was traditional and had, I don't even know, 20, 30, 40 volunteers or something like that. And he was trying to transition them from kind of a Sunday school class model to a small group relational model, and as well as the Orange strategy. And all of them quit. All of them quit. He had everybody quit.
No.
Nobody wants, and I'm sure they don't want to hear me say this, but he's the only person I've ever heard say that. And he even says he would totally do it again. He built it up with new awesome volunteers in faster than you would even think. And he would do it again tomorrow. No problem. Usually what I see is people, sometimes you'll have people that serve every other week, right? And let's say a ministry has 50 volunteers that serve every other week. I think sometimes we don't even realize, again, this is going to sound bad because you care about all the volunteers, but some of it's just math. If you can get half of them to do weekly, you have the same number. You know what I mean? And of course you want those 25 that didn't continue serving to serve somewhere. You hate that they would be disconnected, but sometimes I think we believe it's riskier than it really is to call people to that bigger commitment and to serve weekly.
Right. Absolutely. I know. Isn't that it's crazy. People don't realize that. And that was true at this church too. When you look at the people serving once a month, you basically are making more work for yourself. That means you're going to need 4 times the volunteers that you would typically need.
Yeah. And a lot of churches I see, they don't get exactly that, but they get enough to where you'd totally be fine. It's almost no risk, really. I mean, you'll probably have some people step down, but you have so many volunteers, it's really probably no risk to move them to weekly if you cast the vision well and kind of do like you did. Be patient and walk through it. So that was your experience there. And now you've working as an Orange specialist and doing the Live to Serve conference for volunteers. You've just been around thousands of children's ministry volunteers. So I want to tap into a little bit of what you may have learned through that, because all of us listening, lead volunteers in some way. And so what have you learned either through the Live to Serve conference and being around those volunteers, or even as an Orange specialist? What have you learned that would be helpful for children's pastors and student pastors to know?
Right. That's a good question. one of the things that I think that we're almost afraid of, and I don't know why this is, and this is true of me too, this is just a weakness, but we're afraid to ask people to do something significant. But I have learned in meeting volunteers and talking to them that they want to be asked to do something significant. Like often we almost apologize for that big ask. Like I need somebody once a month, or I need somebody to own large group, or I need somebody to build sets for us every single month. I need somebody that can make our stage look amazing. I need somebody that is a greeter who will arrive an hour ahead of time and turn on all the computers. Just those things we think, oh, that's just too much to ask somebody, so I'll just dump it all back on myself. And people want to feel like they are doing something important for the church. We almost do them a disservice when we allow them to do, oh, you can just serve 1 hour out of your entire month, because then it doesn't even feel like it's a big deal if they show up or not. They don't feel important anyway. So I've just learned that people really want to see the big picture. They want to see that they are such a key role. They almost want to feel like, oh, you might not make it if I'm not there. And that's a good thing. I don't know why we've gotten so apologetic for making those giant asks from people. But I think that's probably the biggest thing I've learned just talking to volunteers.
That's good. That's good. And you've had tons of them come through, and, Live to Serve is basically a conference for volunteers. And you have large group time where they're all together, and then you break out into different roles, right? So they can go to a breakout as a small group leader or as a worship leader, right. Different things like that. Yeah. Is there anything else that stood out about, what you've learned or experienced through Live to Serve? Because you've done it a few times too. So maybe there could even be things you've changed along the way based on what you learned in previous years.
Yeah. I've learned that teenagers are amazing. I have been shocked at how many teenagers have shown up to these Live to Serve events. Like, what teenager gives up a Saturday morning to come hang out at a conference and learn how to work with kids better?
Yeah.
But we have so many teenagers. I think that's a cool thing that I would say to anybody, if you don't utilize your teenagers well in your ministry, they are such an amazing resource to tap into. They're young, they're fun, they're hip, they know the culture. They are who these kids want to be and want to be around. So that's been a really fun thing. I've also learned that volunteers these people are rock stars. Like, if you can truly get a volunteer excited and on board with your mission and vision and tell them you need them to help run with it, man, I'm blown away that some of these people are not paid staff. They show up and they own it so much so that you think they're on staff. You're like, they've got to be on the payroll because these people are superstars. And so I've just been blown away at how much volunteers have truly changed the face of church across America. We can't do it as a children's pastor. I couldn't change that church by myself. I was one person and I needed 300 volunteers and had 700 kids. Well, I can't do all that alone. But I had some amazing volunteers come on board. And just through Live to Serve, I've gotten to meet those people and see that that's truly still alive in our country today. And that's awesome.
Yeah, and students, I think a lot of churches, they might even have to make a shift where if they do student programming during children's programming, obviously students can't serve. And so it might be worth considering changing that up. There's a pastor in Texas that I talked to that was their plan. Their student ministry met during services, and they moved it to Sunday night, I think. And then they even used that space to kind of make a separate environment for 4th and 5th grade kids. They still use the same curriculum and everything, just created a little bit of a different environment and a little bit different stuff with large group. And they saw, I think the number doubled just in that age group. And then they got most of those students serving, and so it helped all around. It was a big win. I know for us, we always joke when our preschool director, she has to keep the student ministry fall retreat on the calendar because when it happens, she knows she's losing like a quarter to a third of her volunteers because students will be away at a retreat. So it's cool. It's hard for her, but it's just a reminder of how critical they are. That's good.
Yeah, they're so good. I think that teenagers sometimes get a bad rap. Um, and man, we have got some superstars serving in our churches across the country. In fact, whenever we talk about like truly being engaged, this is a part of our Live to Serve Day. We talk about just being present when you're there with the kids. And I have more leaders tell me that it's the adults that they really have to kind of prod and prompt to be present, aka get off your iPhone and quit looking at Facebook during large group time.
Yeah, which is
And
funny because you think it's the
yeah,
opposite.
yeah. And they're like, it's not our teenagers. They're fully engaged. They're singing and dancing and a part of it with the kids. And it's the adults that we have to fuss at a little bit. So
Yep.
yeah, I love teenagers. And I never thought I would say that. Teenagers kind of scared me.
I think they
I
in
do
some
kids
ways scare
ministry
everybody.
for a reason. I don't do teenage ministry,
Yeah.
but
Well, and your point about volunteers leading in big ways too, I think that's just a good reminder that it's totally possible. You know, I mean,
yeah,
some people listening might think, I don't really have anybody that does any more than just help, right? But like you've
right.
said, you've seen volunteers that lead, and we've talked on prior podcasts with some other leaders where they have volunteers leading the entire elementary ministry, you know, at a church of 800, you know, on a weekend, and just huge things that you wouldn't even think maybe are possible, but they really are. And you just have to go after it and ask them, you know, to step up and respond in a big way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I would challenge you if you're sitting listening to this thinking you just don't understand, I have to do it all. I would challenge you and say, have you asked anybody to help you?
Yeah, even just one person, right? Just start with one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So at Live to Serve, the morning is dedicated mostly to volunteers. It's for staff and volunteers, but
Right.
they're invited to that. But then specifically, staff are invited to an afternoon session that's an add-on, and that looks different. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So when Sue Miller and I started to dream about Live to Serve and what this could look like, we knew that we wanted to help leaders with their volunteers to inspire them and celebrate them and train them. But we also wanted some time to pour into ministry leaders. Like that's a big part of both of our hearts, is to just help ministry leaders to feel better equipped. And so this year we brought in a ministry leader and a dear friend of mine that I actually worked with at my last church. His name was Jeff Helton. And he has a passion for helping leaders discover their strengths and their gifts, to lead well, to serve in healthy ministry environments. He's just really good at bringing that out in other people. So we invited him to lead the afternoon session for us. And it looked a little different than when we've done in the past, but we got such a great response. And so Jeff's going to be on the team with us again at this next round of Live to Serves. And he's a counselor and a pastor. He's been on church staff. He just has a lot of perspective. But he really pushes us to think about who we are, the gifts God's given us, if we're using them to the fullest of our ability. And some of us don't even know what our gifts are, or our strengths, or our leadership styles. So he's helping to unpack all that for us. It's been a great, great thing to connect with these ministry leaders and encourage them in what they do, and to keep going and to not stop, and give them tools to do it even better.
And I got to be there with you all and hang out, which was a lot of fun. We got to talk, and I got to experience Live to Serve. It wasn't right near me, but I got to drive down to you all in Raleigh, and I got to be part of that session as well. And I love that it was very much about, kind of like you said, working on yourself as a leader, and then being encouraged to lead well, to lead with confidence. We talked about the book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which ironically is the first book you have to read when you come on our staff. So I love that. It's a great book. And I just feel like, and you'd probably agree, a lot of us don't have the time, or haven't made the time to work on it, right? We just keep working in it, or to work on ourselves and grow ourselves as leaders. And that time in the afternoon was specifically about that. So if you haven't made time for it, that afternoon was great, because you had to do it then.
Well, one of my favorite things that he said, I don't know if you caught this that day, Nick, but when he said, God has given you this role and you are ridiculously in charge.
Yeah, that was good.
And
That's
I
good.
thought that's good because we forget. Like we get into I'm tired, I don't have enough volunteers, I'm overwhelmed. I've got more kids than I have classroom space for, and we forget that we are ridiculously in charge of this. God has placed us here for a reason. And Jeff just helped me even personally as a leader to look at what that means in my own life and how to step up and do what God's placed me in this position to do.
Yeah, it made me think about, is there anywhere where I'm letting somebody push me to do something that I wouldn't do if I was making the call as a ridiculously in charge leader, right? Or
Right.
volunteers saying, hey, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do that. So then we don't do it, right? Or they're not showing up
Right.
on time and we don't say anything about it. Like there's a lot of ways in which we can not be ridiculously in charge. That was really good. I thought that was helpful.
Yeah, I loved that statement. That was one of my favorites.
So where can leaders find out more about Live to Serve? Like you'll have some stops again this coming year, next year, actually 2017. So where can they find out more about that?
Yes. Okay. If they will go to livetoserve.co, not .com.
Leave
I don't
off the
know
end.
why it's .co, but it's .co. I think live to serve everything else was already gone.
Yeah, people must have it. Yeah, so you have .co.
We have
.co.
.co. So go to livetoserve.co, and we already have locations posted, and probably by the time this podcast launches, we will have dates posted, and we would love to have you guys join us. It is a really great day of fun and celebration and inspiration for you and your volunteers.
And the great thing is, obviously, it is coming closer. So if it's near you, that the advantage is you can bring your volunteers, and it's really cheap. It's really cost effective as opposed to maybe trying to take them to a conference or even some other things that might come locally. That's in my opinion, one of the greatest values in it is that it's really affordable. And if it is near you, it's close, you can get volunteers there on a Saturday.
Right, exactly. We're still working on all the pricing, but it'll be less than $30 a person.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I don't know. I know most people, maybe you don't even think about what it costs, but as someone who probably has a little bit of understanding of what those things cost, that's a really, really, really good price.
Right. Yeah. And if you think, if you wanted to take them to any conference anywhere, whether it be Orange Conference or another ministry-based conference anywhere in the country, you're going to pay either gas or airfare, hotel, meals, conference fee, easily $1,000. So to bring your volunteers just to be trained for less than $30, I think it's an amazing deal too.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Now, we talked a little bit about, you mentioned how you help lead the charge for VBS at Orange and what Orange does for that. So tell us a little bit about what Orange does to help leaders with VBS and where they can learn more about it.
This is my first year to lead the charge for VBS. And VBS for our company in the past started because we have this amazing camp team. They were writing all this content, putting things together, and then they thought, what if we just pass it on? Which is great. It was great, and it served its purpose. Well, then they started realizing, wow, we've got a lot of people who really do VBS. This is a bigger thing than we knew. And people are really asking for it. So they asked me to come alongside the camp team and take that off of their plate and start to create a separate VBS product. I've written VBSs for other companies throughout my ministry career, so I have some experience in that area. So I was excited to add that piece of the puzzle to my job description.
The specialist that just keeps growing role. Yeah.
Right. Because I used to do VBS. I loved VBS. I think Orange wants to help people see how we can create a VBS that does a couple things. Number one, we're starting summer of 2016 and going forward. Our VBS will coordinate with our summer series because we realized people spend thousands of dollars on VBS. And at the end of the week, they tear all the decorations down and throw them away or give them to somebody else, and it's done. And we thought, we don't want to build up that momentum and then it be done. We would love to keep the momentum going all summer. So we created this VBS that then feeds into summer so that you can say to somebody, if you have a family that's never been in a church and they come to your VBS and their kids have a great time, you can say, hey, we're going to keep this going. We're going to have this same thing Sunday at our church. You can come back and keep on enjoying this awesome experience that you've enjoyed this week. So we hope it'll be an on-ramp to get people who are unchurched into your church. Connect them with some friends, connect them with some small group leaders, and let them have a week of just fun. They're going to learn about the Bible. They're going to play games. They're going to, eat snacks.
Hey, they might eat the crafts too.
Might.
Yeah, if they're young enough. They might eat that. Yeah, eat the glue and whatever else. Or,
the Fruit Loop necklaces. Those are edible.
Exactly.
Totally.
Hey, if you make them edible, they might like the crafts even more. Sounds good to me.
They're gonna make crafts and maybe eat them. So we want it to be more than, hey, we're just looking to do a VBS. We want to see it really be a time for small group leaders and their kids to connect, and an on-ramp to get people who are unchurched into your church.
That's good. And for most people, that's what VBS was always intended to be. It's kind of a mix of like helping disciple kids a little bit more in a focused time, but also something you could invite people to that weren't a part of any church. So that's really good.
Right. Yeah. And I think we just had not been as intentional with it to combine it with our summer series and really see how that could all play together. Because now when you spend thousands of dollars on those decorations, you can use them. You can leave them up.
Yeah, which is great. Yeah.
Say, hey, this fits the summer theme. We don't have to throw it away. It also goes hand in hand with our new summer devotional that every summer we come out with a summer devotional that kids can do on their own. And now it not only fits the summer curriculum, but it'll also fit our VBS, which is cool.
Yeah, that's good. We've bought that the last couple of years, and then sold it for kids and for families to use, which is great. I grew up going to church and went to VBS, and when I got older and graduated, helped serve in it and teach in it. And I remember one of the things that bugged me was that while it was geared towards helping connect families who weren't a part of any church, we didn't do a great job, like you're saying, with that. I mean, we certainly invited them back, but it wasn't like we were inviting them to the same experience or even something they could kind of predict. It was almost like come back to church as we have been doing it, which is different than what you experienced at VBS, right? So I love that you're being intentional about tying the two together, thinking, how can I get families to take another step coming out of VBS, not just be done with it? That's good.
Right. Yeah, that's funny
good.
You say that, because in our dreaming and planning, we said this is one thing we don't want. We don't want kids to have an amazing week and then they come back the next Sunday to your church and you're like, oh yeah, the kids' space is down there in the last room in the basement where it smells moldy. And
yeah. I saw a sign on, I don't know if it was posted on Twitter today, of a church. And the concept is fine. It's just the way it was worded on the sign. It was like kids can be dropped off around the back or something like that. Like literally a signpost, like almost like a stop sign. And it's like to have a separate entrance for kids and families is awesome, even if it is around the back, but you probably don't want to word it like, yeah, just drop them off around the back or whatever. And that, that could feel like the experience you get sometimes doing something like a VBS or some type of event where we put a lot of emphasis on it and do it well. And then all of a sudden come back the next week and it's like a whole different experience.
Ugh,
that's not
fun. Let's don't do that.
Yeah, let's not do that. That's not good. So you mentioned Sue Miller and Jeff Helton. You all work together on Live to Serve, and we're actually going to have Sue on an upcoming podcast here, which will be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
But the three of you have started something new as well to help leaders in children's ministry. Tell us about coaching circles.
Yes, we are super excited about this. So as we've traveled with Jeff, Jeff's heart is to coach people. He is just a born coach. We all have our gifts, and that is such his heart is to see people in ministry thrive. Sue and I, we have such a passion for kids ministry leaders and to connect them with each other and to support them and to cheer them on. Just wait until you have Sue on the podcast. You'll have to turn the volume down because she is such a cheerleader.
She is. It's awesome. It'll be fun.
She's the most amazing champion for kids ministry. So just as we began to dream, we thought, how can we bring these leaders for more? Like the afternoon sessions have been great. But we kept hearing people say, I want more. I would love to continue this. I wish we could stay. I wish we had 24 hours together. So Jeff really is the driving force behind this, and he asked Sue and I to be a part. And it's called Coaching Circles. You can read more about it at coachingcircles.org. But they are going to be mentoring groups that we are working to put together with people, anybody who serves in kids ministry. Right now, it's just going to be for kids ministry. Who knows how Jeff might expand that. But right now, we're going to focus on kids ministry and bring them together to train, connect, mentor. So our vision is that they would come here to Nashville in September. If they sign up to be a part of these coaching circles, they do a 2-day event here with Sue and Jeff and myself. And we do a lot of intensive digging into the nuts and bolts of kids ministry, but also doing a lot of personality testing and leadership style and those kind of things. But then the groups would continue. So once we met together in Nashville, we would assign small groups of maybe 8. We're still kind of fleshing this out, maybe 8 to 10 people. And then we would meet once a month together online to continue those connections and to continue to just be iron sharpening iron and driving each other forward and have almost like an accountability group together. But Jeff and Sue and I would bring topics that we believe are key to help ministers continue to develop. So we would speak on key topics throughout those 6 months. We're also working on a private Facebook page where they could come and just connect with each other after they're here with us in their retreat. So we're praying about it. You guys can pray with us too. We want to have the right people in these circles just to be a great support for one another.
I highly recommend it. I'm in a coaching network now, and I was in one before that. I think you should be in something like that where you're getting coaching and being around other leaders regularly. I mean, it's great to go to conferences. I learned so much, as you know, like when I go to the Orange Conference or any other conference and talk to people. But there's something different when you're in a network like that where you can really flesh things out. Like, okay, here's a challenge I'm facing. What do you all think? You get the wisdom of the room, plus you and Sue and Jeff sharing. I mean, it's just really, really helpful. So I highly recommend it. I come away from ours, the one I'm in, with just pages of notes, no different than going to a conference. But typically I've been able to even get it more specific. Just because of the environment. You can ask more questions and get more feedback. So that's really good. We'll link to that in the show notes as well as everything else that we've talked about. Amy, awesome. This has been really, really helpful. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
This has been super fun. Thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed it.
You bet. Me too. Thanks, Amy. Well, since we recorded this interview, I actually wrapped up the coaching network that I was in, and I already miss it because it was awesome. I loved it. And I really think everybody should be in a network like that. So maybe that's the action item coming out of this podcast. You're going to find a way to intentionally network with other leaders. The one that I was just in actually had a mastermind format. So in the business world, they have these mastermind groups where you get together with other leaders or business owners or entrepreneurs or whatever. But it's pretty simple. It's all built around 3 things. Each person shares one thing that's going really well, one thing they would like wisdom on or help with from the group, and one resource or tool that they think would be helpful. And we did that, and that was great. And I've multiple times, I have almost sent out an email to everybody who subscribes to my list and some other networks I'm in to see if anybody would be interested in doing a mastermind group. And I just haven't done it yet. But if you are interested, go ahead and email me at nick@nickblevins.com or hit me up on Twitter or on Facebook, or jump into this coaching circles thing. So I think either one would be a great opportunity. I'd love to start a group like that and pilot that if you're interested, but coaching circles would obviously be an excellent opportunity, particularly if you're in children's ministry. So maybe that's what you need to do coming out of here, is to get in a network. I think that's a really great thing. You can get the notes and links and all that stuff we talked about in the show notes at nickblevins.com/episode 8. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because in the next episode, we talk with my friend Kevin Monahan. Kevin is the Next Gen pastor at 12 Stone Church in Atlanta, Georgia. They're a 15,000 plus attendance church with 8 or 9 locations. And we talked to Kevin about how do you manage multiple teams and multiple ministries and multiple staff. So you don't want to miss that in the next episode of the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.